And here we are. So we're up to chapter 10. Chapter 10 falls in the heels of the son of Yerubal, of Gidon, whose name was Avimelech. Avimelech, of course, took the throne, so to speak, or the mantle of leadership by force, and he was finally brought to an end, as we learned last week, by a woman who threw a rock down down a wall, down the tower, and cracked his head. To which he basically asked his right-hand man to finally put him to death, so that it will not be written down that a woman had killed him, which was, I guess, in those days for him would have been the lowest, so degrading. How can a woman, take down such a strong man? Regardless of what it is, the whole point was that he was brought down to shame through the hands of a woman, in terms of a positive way. That yes, he was finally, his cruelty was subdued. And I just run, by the way, making a parallel which we spoke about last week, which what somebody was asking, why do we have all these stories? Yes, they're nice. Some of them are entertaining, etc. But why such an important, in such important work for us? And the idea is, again, that we learn, as we mentioned, we learn from the wickedness of man, of human beings, how cruel we can be. And this is, of course, what we are commemorating tonight, the 6 million. And so we do see a parallel of the storylines do continue. We don't take the values and the lessons seriously, history unfortunately does repeat itself. And so let's continue on with chapter 10. Last chapter was incredibly long, was 57 verses. If I'm not mistaken, it's one of the longest chapters in the entire Tanakh, which we did in two sections, but this you'll see is a much smaller chapter. So chapter 10. Vayakom achare Avimelech, and right after Avimelech rises, Loshiat Israel, in order to deliver, to help Israel get out of its misery. Tola ben Pua ben Dodo ish Issachar. This is a real. I don't know if you'll be able to fit all his names on a single business card. It was Tola, the son of Pua, and then it says ben Dodo. And over here we have a little bit of a quandary, as is it actually the name of somebody named Dodo, another the son of Dodo, or if anybody who knows a little bit of Hebrew, what does Dodo mean? Dod is.
Well, Dodi is my bride,
right. Dodi is my bride. What's Dodo?
His bride.
His uncle.
His uncle. His uncle.
Oh,
exactly. Dod is an uncle. So this the Ben Dodo, the son of an uncle. In other words, is it related? And if in that case, so who are they referring to? So let's look back again at the name. Tola ben Pua, Tola the son of Pua, Ben Dodo, either the son of Dodo ish Issachar, from the tribe of Issachar, V'hu yeshev b'Shamir b'Har Ephraim, but he lived in Shamir, in the mountain of Ephraim. So we can look at it. There's the commentaries actually have a split as to who this person really is. Is it Tola ben Pua, the son of Dodo, somebody named Dodo, who is his grandfather? No, or Dodo, the uncle of Avimelech, right? In other words, the family lineage still somewhat continues. However, the ones that hold that it's a total different person, that it's actually named, the person's name is Ben Dodo, it's not referring to a family relationship with Avimelech. They point to the fact that it's Ish Issachar. Why does the pasuk give us this information that he is from the tribe of Issachar? Because it's not the same tribe as Gidon, which Gidon was from Menashe. So there's a little, some say, but maybe it's Ben Dodo, but from the mother's side, etc. But regardless, it's most likely somebody with no relationship to Avimelech. Even more so, why would you think that it's not any relationship to Avimelech? What would be your reasoning?
Kind of his arms.
quite simply, after having a tyrant like Avimelech, why would you want anybody related to him, right? coming to power. So so this is another person, another leader comes up after Avimelech. His name is Tola ben Puah. Vaishpot Israel Esrim Veshalosh Shana, and he led Israel for 23 years. Vayamot, and he passes away. Vayikaver b'Shamir, and he is buried in the same place where he's living, in a Shamir, which is in Har Ephraim. So we have two psukim, pasuk 1 and pasuk 2, which is basically 23 years of history, and yet there's nothing exciting that happens in terms of nothing so eventful that is worth recording in the book of Judges.
Yosi, why is the pay in brackets?
Excellent. So we've in the text, sometimes you'll see a pay, sometimes you'll see three pays, sometimes you'll see a samach in brackets. What it is actually, when you look at the text written out in Torah form. So in other words, if you open up the scriptures such as the Torah, and if you look at it, the Chumash, by the way, you will see the Chumash has these as well, pays and samachs, etc. Pay is patuach, and samach is sagur, closed. So pay means that if you were writing this out, if you were a scribe, and you got to the word beshamir at the end of verse 2, the remainder of that sentence remains open. There's nothing written else on. It's a hard enter. In other words, you enter and now you start another paragraph. So these were really editorial ways of saying this was the end of a story. It doesn't connect with the next one. That's a chapter or in itself, and now a new paragraph. So you'll see it as well, and when you follow the storyline of what we're talking, you'll kind of see, oh yeah, okay, now we're moving into the next story. So the first two psukim were about this gentleman named Tola ben Puah, and uneventful, or at least not eventful enough for any stories to happen, which means I guess he was doing his job, and he was leading Israel for 23 quiet years, and he dies and he's buried. Next one. By the way, if you look at verse 57, what happens at the end?
There's a pay.
Pay. Yeah. Next chapter. Understand? It's like a next story. So
Yeah.
and here's as well. So it's an editorial. It's an editing in Hebrew. It's an ancient editing way that they left it all open. That's the end of that story.
Is that used in present days literature at all?
Certainly not in terms of because now we have, your editing is very different. It's like I mentioned, it's enter, it's tab. It's sometimes every book also has different. Sometimes you double space, not single line, etc. In text, when it was written in column format, that was very. Imagine the whole thing would have been there were no periods, there were no commas, as if anybody who's
punctuation.
Seen, right, there was no punctuation. Anybody who's seen the Torah will attest to it. It's just words, it's just letters and spaces going throughout. That big space delineates the end of that idea and moving into a new story, as we are moving right now. So the first two is dealing with one person, and now he passes away, and we move into another person. Vayakom acharav, and after Tola ben Puah, Yair HaGiladi. We have this guy named Yair from Gilad, Vaishpot et Israel, and he also happens to lead Israel. How many? Esrim u'shtaim shana, 22 years. Okay, and Vahilo shloshim banim. This gentleman Yair has 30 sons. Rochvim al shloshim ayarim. They rode on 30 burrows, they said, but these are very high-end luxury horses. This is what they each had, the Cadillac of horses. Ushloshim ayarim lahem, and notice the words are very similar. And they ruled over 30 non-walled cities or boroughs. Lahem yikra'u chavot Yair. in that region, those 30 boroughs were named Chavot Yair ad hayom hazeh, until this very day. Asher be'eretz Gilad, which is in the land of Gilad. If you actually look at the structure, it goes forward and then actually kind of explains itself going backwards. And the reason why is, if you recognize the name Yair Hagiladi, it actually happens in the name comes up in the Torah when the land we're just about to enter into the land of Israel. Yair ben Gilad, he's the one who wants to stay across in Menashe. He wants to stay on the Transjordan, and he actually conquers it, and he names it Chavot Yair. This is not the same guy. Although he has the same name, he is not the same guy. And part of it is why? Lahem yikra'u Chavot Yair. To them, they were called Chavot Yair. He did not name them. When you look at the Torah texts, the Torah clearly says Yair Hagiladi names his borough Chavot Yair. So this is just, it's a play on words, and it's almost like a mirror. Chavot Yair, Asher be'eretz Gilad. It says they live in Gilad. Look at the first verse 3. Vayakam acharav Yair Hagiladi, right? Where is he from? But it's kind of just to let you know he's only there. This is not the original guy. Michael, I see that you have a hand up.
Yeah, I do. I'm questioning, if it had been a walled city, would there have been an additional word beside Yerim to indicate that it was a walled city?
I think it would have. I think that the whole idea of that this person was somebody of means and prominent in the community. With regards to the city, I think it alludes to the fact that there was peace for 22 years, because had there been walled cities, peace could have been because of the nature of the protection that the walls offer the citizens. In this case, it was 30 cities, 30 municipalities. So it's a big ground. It's not that they all lived in one place. So it was over a large area, and they lived peacefully because they didn't even need the how do you call it? They didn't need walled cities for protection. I think that is what it's alluding to.
Any reason, Yosi, any reason why, like any symbolism, you say Shloshim Ayarim or Shloshim Ayarim?
Yeah. So part of it was it's somebody who reads it and they're trying to figure out what exactly are isn't it redundant? Ushloshim Ayarim, Ushloshim Ayarim Lahem. You see it? They ride on 30 Ayarim and they have 30 Ayarims. So yeah, it comes from the word ear, like in modern Hebrew. So Ain Resh, so Ayarim. Whoever wrote this pasuk was definitely having fun. Like this is what I'm saying. He was playing with words. They had, and it almost sounds like a song. He had 30 writing on. Obviously, how many do you think? How many horses would 30 people ride on? 30, right? Okay, so it's kind of almost redundant in itself, right? What really, what kind of information is that? So it alludes to that in the olden days, people did also share transportation in the sense that it was expensive. Not everybody was able to maybe afford it. So maybe the family would have only had 5 horses that they shared between each other. No, it was 30. Each one had their own horse, but the top of the cream, the cream of the top. And Ayarim, Shloshim Ayarim Lahem, it continues to play with that whole theme of the pasuk, like a funny way of expressing it. They had 30 cities, happened to be not non-walled cities, but I think it's just a very humorous pasuk to begin with, and then it works backwards in terms that they named this place. It was named Chavot Yair until this day, which is exactly the same construction as in the Torah, Asher be'eretz Gilad, Hagilad, which is in the land of Gilad. And I want to show you something. Vayamot Yair, and Yair passes away. Vayikaver beKamon, and he is buried in Kamon. I want to show you. There's in Israel actually today there is a place called Kamon. I want to show you. So if you look at the map on top, I'll
There we go.
do you see it? That dot right there is where Kamon is in Israel today. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same place. Interesting. I found out there is actually a place in Israel. And if you look at it, to me, it kind of falls either in Zvulun or in more Naphtali. Do you see it? In the region of Naphtali, if you look at it geographically, because let me show you here.
So fairly far north.
It's far north. And if you look, I should move. Give me one. I should move this because then I can't write on it. Okay. So if you look at, this is Haifa right here.
Yeah.
Right here. How far do you, so to go, by the way, right now, you'd have to go, actually, this is the way that you'd either this way, or you can go to Haifa this way, or this way. Roughly, how far do you think that this distance is? From
It's about 50, 60 miles, isn't it? Including all the turns.
So all
I
the
realize the crow flies, it's a lot closer.
So if you did all this, just to give you an idea of how small
An
Long
hour and a
Island
half
is,
ride.
it's
Yeah.
about 52 kilometers. So about 35 miles. That's it.
Yeah.
What's the speed limit?
Pardon?
It would take less than an hour?
It's about 45 minutes. These roads are not bad, by the way. The highway 85 and that they're nice roads. But regardless, it's close. It's not far from Haifa. Okay.
Seems to be closer to Aker.
Yeah, and it's not far as well, as you can tell from the Sea of Galilee onto the and just north of Nazareth. That's right. Okay.
And also
Kind of.
not far from Tveria. Well,
Yeah.
Tveria's a bit of a distance.
So if you want to see kind of where that it ends up being in here. It's somewhere around here. On that map. Do you see where Naphtali is?
Yeah,
It's somewhere around there. So it falls in the situation in Naphtali proper, just for you to know. And on the left-hand side, by the way, on the left-hand side are a couple of pictures of what it looks like today. It's actually a little hill. It's a mountain. It's a beautiful little mountain. You see it?
mhm.
Like
And
Mount
that's what-
Royal.
Right. That's what the issue right now looks like from top, from an aerial shot. But then if you look down, you'll see the highway, and the highway is it's a nice highway. It's a 2-laner. It's a beautiful, the highways in Israel actually are quite.
And there's a fish farm in the background, which I know quite well.
Okay, so there you go. So interesting. So there you go. So that is where that little
Yosi?
city is. Come on.
Yair is from Gad. Yair is Gileadite. So why would he be buried in the area of Gad?
No, so that's again Hagil Adi. I said this is the name of a place in Israel today. I don't think it's the same place. I was just showing that there's still
No,
a place
okay.
today.
On your other map, you'll see there's a Kamon in the territory of Menashe.
Right here, exactly. This is where it would be, right here. Come on. Which makes sense because he's Menashe. Right here. You see it? Right here.
That looks like a different location than what you pointed out in the territory of Naphtali, or
100%. This is the Kamon of the Torah. I'm just showing that in Israel today, there's a Kamon that is right.
okay, sorry.
Today, this is the present day. Here, the two pictures on your left-hand side is present day, which is right now in Naphtali. So there's a lot of names as well that we have in Israel, throughout Israel, that are odes to places either in the Torah that are not necessarily were not in Israel proper, or their names play words that play with words in terms of giving you some kind of religious connotation. Others are not. Others are just names, just like any other place in the world names them, whether it's a hill or something. But most of the names in Israel are connected with Torah names.
I have a question about the translation of burrow and borrow, which is an interesting play on words in
Yes.
English.
Yes.
But is there another word for mule or donkey? Because burrow is not a very common In
So-
English, the
I
animal
think-
would usually be referred to either as a mule or a donkey, depending on the parentage.
I think it was the reason why they use burrows was number one, again, the play on words as
Yeah.
in English, and two, it's supposed to be a high grade animal. So this is not like the bottom of your, it was a very high standard animal.
Was it a big one or a small one?
I was
As a horse, I mean,
right. I
because
can't.
they used to call small horses burros.
Yeah, this I don't know. I just know it was when I read in terms of mefarshim and commentaries is that they used to ride on fancy animals. These were not just, like they bought them somewhere secondhand and they were, rickety and old and couldn't carry. These were beautiful. People knew when they were riding out. These had all the bells and whistles, the electric windows and cruise control. These were all dawdled up. These were fancy schmancy people. Okay, so they were people of means and people high in the community. That's what it was trying to reflect to.
But a burro, as that I remember teaching about years ago, was not necessarily a rickety old thing. It was mainly a carrier
It
for,
it could
and it was
be
smaller because they didn't have to go high to put things on it.
Let me see what. Almost positive here. I think let's see what
Not that it makes a
What
difference.
Rashi says,
thoroughbreds, ulin, the choicest of horses.
there you go.
The choicest of
Oh,
coming from
Rashi, no less.
so that's what Rashi, one of the commentaries, holds that these were no simple animals. These were the choicest of horses. Choicest horses. So the best of the best. That's what they were. That's what they were
Right.
riding. Okay. And Peter, you see again, right after he passes away, what do we have? It's the end of his story. We have a pay right here. That's it. Now there's nothing written on the line anymore linear. Enter, we're going into the next line. Let's see what happens. So now we just passed 45 years, right? Because we had 23 years of Tola, and then we had 22 years of this guy named Yair. So 45 years pass, 45 years pass, and Vayakom Vayosifu b'nei Israel asot hara b'nei Adonai. However, after again 45 years of pleasant living, security, and peaceful living, the Israelites once again continued to lasot hara b'nei Adonai, to do to that which is deemed offensive or bad, improper in the eyes of God. Vayavdu et habe'alim ve'et ha'ashtarot. They once again go to what? They move towards the Baalim and the Ashtarot, which they did since the beginning of this book. And vet Elohei Aram, vet Elohei Tzidon, vet Elohei Moab, vet Elohei Vnei Ammon, vet Elohei Flishtim. So now, along with the Baalim and Ashtarot, they took upon themselves to also start looking at the gods of Aram, the gods of Tzidon, the gods of Moab, and as well of Bnei Ammon and the gods of the Flishtim. Vayazvu et Adonai v'lo avadu, and they left the Lord and they no longer served God. Vaycharaf Adonai b'Yisrael, and God was incensed, was angered with Israel. Vayimkarem bi'at Plishtim, and he sells them, hands them over into the hands of the Pelishtim, uviyad b'nei Ammon, and as well to the Ammonites. Vayir atzu vayrotetzud b'nei Israel, and they battered and shattered. They actually caused a lot of tension. They caused a lot of trouble to the Israelites. Bashana, here in the year, Shmoneh Esre Shana, for 18 years, they continued as such. At Kol Bnei Israel asher be'ever Hayarden, all the Israelites that were on the Transjordan, Beretz Hamori, Asher Bagilad, in the land of the Amorites that were in the Gilad. So if you remember, let's let's go. So we are right now talking about, you see Ammon Bashan, we're talking about this this part of the land. Okay, we're in this part of the land. Okay, the Jordan, do you see the Jordan going down right here? This
Yeah.
is Jordan cutting it right, right down here. Okay,
Hmm.
so it's everyone that are east of the River Jordan. This is the area that we're talking about right now. Let's continue this.
Yosi,
Yes. Hi,
I
Farhan.
find it so strange that they're talking about horses in that part of the world and not camels or donkeys or,
Yes, camels also were not, I think they were even further down south and east. Not to say that there weren't that many camels, but I think I mean, I'm sorry, I should say maybe camels were more of the norm and the horses were more expensive. They were either seen, you either had working horses, but you didn't have the riding horses because they were certainly, I think, more expensive. It was an ode to wealth. That's what it was. But these were important people. These were not just schleppers that are happen to be, you know, they were being ruled by an elite class, somebody that are the people that are a family that is well to do. Okay, so let's continue with number 9. All right, so they are right now, the Israelites across the river are living in under very difficult conditions. Via Avruvne Amonet Hayarden, and after they gained power on the eastern side of the Jordan, Bnei Ammon crosses the Jordan, Lehilachem gam bihuda uveBinyamin uvebeit Ephraim, vatetzer leIsrael meod. And so now they cross over. Bnei Ammon crosses over to fight with Judah, to fight with Binyamin, and as well the household of Ephraim. And they were as like a thorn on the side of the Israelites. They caused them a lot of distress. Vayzaku b'nei Israel el Adonai lemor. And so, as they're in distress, they yell out. The Israelites yell out to God, saying, "Chatanu lach, we have realized right now that we have sinned against you. V'chi azavnu et Eloheinu, for we have left, we have forsaken our God. V'na'avodet ha'be'alim, and we have worshipped the gods of Baalim." And that's, again, you see the pay? So that's the story. Now it's the response. Vayomer Adonai al b'nei Israel, God responds and retorts to the Israelites. Halo mi Mitzrayim, umin ha'emori, umin b'nei Ammon, umin Plishtim, vet Sidonim, va'amalek, uma'on lachatzu etchem. Look, yeah, the Egyptians, you had the Amorites, you had Bnei Ammon, Plishtim, you had Sidonim, you had Amalek, you had Maon. They all caused you a lot of, they squeezed you, they oppressed you. Vatitzaku elai, and you yelled out to me, Va'oshia etchem yadam, did I not deliver you? Did I not rescue you and saved you from their hands? So what did you do? In order to show me gratitude, what did you do? Vatem azavtem oti. So what did you do? You forsaken me. Vatavdu Elohim acharim, and you ended up wanting to serve other gods. Lachen lo osif lo'oshia etchem. Therefore, I will not again deliver you. Lechu, go, v'zaku el ha'elohim asher bechartem bam. Go and yell out and go pray to the gods that you have chosen. Hema yoshiu lachem ba'etzaratchem. Let them, they will deliver you. Don't worry about it. They are your gods. You have chosen them. Let them deliver you out of your great distress. They retort, Vayomru b'nei Israel el Adonai chatanu. But the Israelites again implore the Lord, and they say, no, we understand, we stand guilty, we have sinned. Aseh atalanu kechol hatov be'inecha. Please do to us as you see fit in your eyes. Please. The only thing we ask from you is Hatzilenu na hayom hazeh. Please save us this very day. Vayasiru et Eloheha nechar mikirbam, and they removed all of the foreign gods that were amongst them. Vayavdu et Adonai, and then they started serving the Lord. But tiktsar nafsho b'mal Israel, for he could not bear the miseries and the yelling and all the suffering of the Israelites.
Yosi, how is
Yes.
God communicating with the people?
Interesting, very, very good question. So I'm gonna let you, how do you think, if you look, by the way, so let me go back again, and it's a very interesting, the way that the psukim are split up is kind of, if you noticed, I read 11 and 12 in unison, right? I didn't stop, right? Let's read it again. Number 11. Vayomar Hashem b'nei Israel, God says to Israelites, Halom Mitzrayim umin ha'emori, umin b'nei Ammon. He's now listing all these nations that have oppressed. Umin ha'plishtim, there's a verb, what happened here? V'tzidonim v'amalek u'maz lachatu etchem. Suddenly it's split right in the middle. It should have been umin plishtim v'tzidonim v'amalek u'maz. All these, they oppressed you. You yelled at me, and I. Why suddenly something's missing? Why? Number one, why is this communication split here? Any idea?
Has to be an interval of time.
Okay, but even then, a sentence, has to have the who, what, when, where, why, right? Like in terms of you can't just write a sentence, because if you started, it should have been at one point, these nations, they bothered you. And then he would say, and then at another time, you had Sidonim and Amalek, Umaon also pestered you. And
So there's a
were
role
present.
for a shofet in between who's communicating back and forth in effect.
So one of them was, it's a literary effect which we have, which is we kind of stop the bad. So in the middle, you actually have to stop. It's almost like you were not that bad, So you only read one pasuk and then you continue on another one. It's kind of like lahavdil, when we have we get back from school and we have two tests that we did really bad on. We're not going to show our parents both of them at the same time. You come back home and you show them one and let them, mad at you or be upset with you. And suddenly the next day you say, oh, I also in this one I also didn't do that well. Like at least you're breaking up, the bad news, so to speak. So this is kind of a similar situation where, God is telling you of all how horrible you have, and I mean, look what I've saved you from. I've saved you from them. And then the Israelites are like, oh, okay, only them. Oh no, more you saved us from this and this as well. So to show God, it wasn't that much. It's a little bit of a very humanistic approach in terms of how we see it, in terms of kind of making our case before God, almost like in a courtroom of showing God that it wasn't so much. Don't worry about it. It's not as much. That's the humanistic, I think, approach to this. So let's answer in terms of how is God. It's very unclear. It's very, very unclear how God is communicating with the Israelites. Some, by the way, say that this also happens to be during the reign of either hold on one second, either Yair, most likely Yair, or either the story, because it's not everything in the Torah is necessarily
Right.
chronologically. So some say that this was either through one of these shoftim, either through Tola or through Yair. But regardless of whether it was at that time, during these 40, 45 years, there's definitely some kind of communication of how they are communicating. So there were still leaders, there were still definitely intermediaries, so to speak, the people who the Israelites still. It wasn't the entire populace that lost way, but it was the majority of the populace. There were still those that were walking around and preaching godliness to the people. And so it was through the means of these people that God had communicated as well. So there were still never ever the communication and the love for Israel was never totally ever cut off. There were always room for return. It was as we mentioned last week as well, the whole idea of the cyclical cycle of doing bad, getting punished for it, yelling and to God for salvation. God brings somebody to help them out, and then finally there's peace. And as soon as they finally feel a little bit of peace, what happens? Whack, they start again sinning, and then they get whacked for it, and they start yelling at God. But there's God, and no matter how many times God tells them, they're like little children. They really don't learn their lesson. But God never turns their back totally. Even here, which God finally says, I will not. Lachen lo osif lo shia etchem. Now I will not. That's it. Therefore, I will no longer continue to deliver you. However, they cry out again, and God, so to speak, can't take it anymore. Like he can't bear hearing his children cry anymore, and he relents. So there's definitely he gave the Israelites some kind of communication methods, but absolutely you're correct. It's not clear as to whom they're using as the medium. You're absolutely right. Okay, so let's continue. A very good way to pick up on that, Henry. Let's continue here. Vayidzaku bnei Ammon vayachanu bagilad. The Ammonites mustered and they put together their camp. They grew in numbers. They strengthened or fortified their army, and they encamped in Gilad. Vayasfu bnei Israel vayachanu b'mitzpah. So you see, by the way, another pay right here. This is another story. So after their salvation, or maybe a quietened down, so to speak, it wasn't full on salvation. Bnei Ammon still has some power. They decide what they're going to do is, let's go to war. And so they amass their army and they encamp in Gilad, but as well, in order to combat it, the Israelites also form a little army, and they encamp in Mitzpah. Vayomru ha'am sarei Gilad ish al rel. The troops, the officers of Gilad, said to one another, Mi ha'ish asher yachel lehilachem bivnei Ammon. Who? We need to find a general. We need to find a leader who will lead us into battle against the Bnei Ammon. Latem yehiyeh rosh. We need a head. We need somebody, a leader. L'chol yoshvei Gilad, for all the entire of the inhabitants of Gilad. And this is actually this. I find literally this chapter is very, very choppy and kind of tries to use cliffhangers as ways of drawing you into the next chapter. But so compare this. This was 18 verses. The last chapter was 57 verses long, and had definitely the ability of splitting it into 2 or 3. But Peter, as you saw, even within chapters, there might be subjects or sub ideas, sub stories. But it was so important with Avimelech to keep it all together. In other words, his outright disgust or his outright evilness was not going to be split up over more than one chapter. In other words, it was so heavy, so dark, it was kept in one. And here we have a couple of stories. It was good for 23 years. It was 22 years. It was bad a little bit. There's a little miscup. It starts being a little bit better, but now we're seeing kind of, again, a power shift where Bnei Ammon wants to see it. I'm just going to let you know that next chapter, which chapter 11, God willing, we'll do next week, is a haftarah. It's a very beautiful, and it's actually coming up soon. I don't want to, if you want to read ahead, great, but it's a beautiful, it's a very well-known story. We're going to get back to less so satirical, but this is actually going to be a text that is used as a haftarah during the year, and it's coming up in a couple of I think right now in about a month and a half or so, we're going to be reading that haftarah, Iftach HaGiladi. It's a beautiful haftarah. but ends up being at the end very problematic, which we'll find out. A lot of interesting stories that halachically or morally also are you get your antennas up there trying to think what the heck is going through these people's head, and when they see it, you get to realize also what values they had in terms of what a word was, how they kept, when they made a promise, it was a promise. It wasn't, I really mean it, but now, but you understand I can't keep it because no, there was no skirting around. And that is also why we have, of course, for Yom Kippur, we start the most important day is, of course, Hatarat Nedarim with Kol Nidre. And that is the segue into next week's chapter 11, which is a beautiful, beautiful story. And I said we'll delve into it a little bit deeper. Any questions? Any comments? So let me first.
I have a question because we spent a little bit of time on Burrow. What was Balaam? Did he have a burrow, or was his the lower class ass?
What I didn't hear. Who
Balaam.
Oh, Bilam.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had, if I'm not mistaken, was it a she donkey? I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was specifically so. Okay, that's actually a really, really, really good question, and you're making the two.
So I have a follow-up question to that.
Okay. So I can't tell you in terms of I'm definitely not. I'll preface it by saying the following. During COVID, when I was at home, I don't know if like many, aside from making the phone calls and the Zoom sessions that we had in between, what was there? Not much to do. I think it was the most television that I've seen in my entire life in a span of like 18 months. And that's when I was really introduced to Netflix in a very deep way. And one of the shows that we watched was a couple of my kids are car enthusiasts, so we're watching a couple of car shows. And from that, one of those, it's a British guy called Top Gear. One of the guys was actually kicked off the show and started his own little series of this is in Britain, and he gets himself a farm. His name is Clarkson, and he gets himself a farm. 2 days ago, I see that the second season just came on, and it was very entertaining. It's very true, very earthy. Like it's hilarious how this guy from the city comes out and he's really enjoying farming, and he wants to. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. All that being said, is the way that he chooses animals. He's got no clue. He relies on an expert that really, tells him how, what crops can grow beside each other. What crops can grow on what type of terrain, because he bought himself a huge land. And then he's deciding to buy sheep, and then he also decides to buy cows. And that's right now he's deciding to buy cows. And he has he can't tell the difference between a cow that is raised to actually eat later on. In other words, you're raising it for the meat, versus there are cows that you raise so they give birth. They're birthing cows, and then they're milk cows. And he can't tell the difference. And it's hilarious. So Miriam, you're asking me about burrows. I have no idea how to tell the difference.
Well, no, I wondered what the word was in Hebrew.
Right.
Because the follow-up question was going to be when, this is New Testament, when Jesus comes riding in, he's riding on a four-legged creature. And I wondered whether in Hebrew it would be the same if Balaam's creature and this one are different. I'm wondering whether Jesus is coming in on the Cadillac or the Ford.
Yeah. So I don't know the New Testament, so I can't really speak to that. I can tell you that in Bilam, he was writing an aton, Aleph Tet Vav Nun, aton. That's what he was writing. It was not referred to as ayarim here. It was referred to as aton. The only other place that is in the Torah, there is one other place in Bereshit that they say ayarim. Who asher ayarim? I don't remember which in Genesis, which parsha, but one person, he's the one who discovers the ayarim. He discovers this breed of horses. But what was special about Bil'am was it was Bil'am's donkey's mouth was one of those special items that was created Ben Hashmashot between Friday night and just before Shabbat occurred. God created a couple of very, very important things. One of them was where Korach is the mouth of the earth that swallows Korach and his disciples. That was created Ben Hashmashot. And one of the things as well was the mouth of the Aton that was going to be speaking. So that was a special piece of that donkey that was created. So does that mean that it was definitely unique? Any donkey that speaks. If anybody saw Shrek, definitely like it was you can't forget a talking donkey. So it's that is definitely unique. How good it was in terms of a ride quality, I think it was, because according to the donkey, when it opens up his mouth, it tells Bilam, have I not treated you well? Have I not been so loyal to you? I've always given you a comfy ride. I've always, made it secure for you. So obviously it did its job properly, whether it was, DNA wise, whether it was, a certain quality in a breed that I don't know. I just know that from this story here, the point of the text telling us is that these were people, they were not ruled by peasants or unworthy people, so to speak. These were people who had means, who were able to how do you call it, to sustain themselves and go around and were also wealthy. That was the allusion to it in terms of the horses. And I see Michael has a question. Michael, you're muted, so just unmute yourself, please.
Isn't that the same term Rashi used that we were looking at the Rashi earlier to describe the horses?
Thoroughbreds. No, he was
Right.
using a close word showing us that it was thoroughbreds, that it was
It's
some
not the
kind.
same word.
Not exactly, no. Do you want to see it? I can show it to you.
Yeah.
Let me show you. And there is.
We're becoming Talmud scholars. We're
Yes.
having fun with the text.
And in English, the Balaam's
Aline, you're right.
transportation is usually called an ass.
Right. And I think
Whatever distinction there is
You're
between
right. It's
that and-
similar, but not the same.
And here you see, and he even says, you see, they own 30 towns, they own 30 unwalled municipalities. This is why they are described as Ayarim, towns, meaning the same as Ayarot, unwalled. So it's
Yeah, there's the unwell question.
yeah. But it was a very, it's one of the most jovial type of pasuk that I know, that he's 30 on 30 on 30. Just a very funny, and they're using the same word for dong, and the cities, and even in the English they were very witty that they used very similar, like Chaim mentioned, boroughs and boroughs, boroughs and boroughs. It's almost the same, and then it's backwards of Chavot Gilad. It actually backwards of the way that it's described in the Torah. It's a very funny and peculiar. It's almost like whoever was right, the actual person who put together or how it was constructed was having a good time with that pasuk. There's no question about it. It's a very, very, very unique construction to a pasuk by all stretches of the imagination. The three, even textually, like if you read it 30 30 30. It's very, very funny. Excellent pickup. Anybody else in terms of a comment? Beautiful. I'm just gonna. Yes. Somebody wanted to say something?
No, just say no comment.
No? Okay. So thank you so much, everybody. I want to wish you all, first of all, thank you for sharing with me with the zchut, for the ability of learning Torah today on a very special day, to commemorate all of our family members who've we've certainly lost, and we've still fighting for in terms of trying to get our numbers and our heritage back to where it should be. But nonetheless, of course, we'll never forget them, and they'll forever be intertwined with our DNA and with our experience in our history. And I pray that that humankind, what we learn is that we have to learn to love each other, not hate each other, but learn our commonalities, things that make us the same, and reasons why we have to behave civilly with each one, with each other. And God willing, there'll never be another tragedy, not for us and not for anyone, regardless of your race, regardless of religion, regardless of who you are on this earth. We're all children of God.
Particularly to